Good evening or good afternoon. Um, we're starting today's class. So 8 minutes past the hour. I think we should just start with the presentations. Now, I just one or two quick announcements. Please check the due dates for various assignments, and please ensure that you don't submit late, because any late submission will not be countenanced at all. Number two, uh, as noted earlier, during the first or second class, there won't be class on the 9th of April. I'll be at a program in Lokoja, so I won't be class on that day, and I won't be able to run the online meeting at the time because my schedule is likely to run to 3 o'clock. That will be on the 9th. Our first in-person class, probably the only one, will be on the 16th. So there will be an in-person class on the 16th, and I'm trying to determine whether that will be in my office or will be at the faculty boardroom, depending on if the place is available. But you'll know before then. But we'll likely stick to virtual meetings before then. Today we are looking at quantitative methods, in historical research. We'll quickly speak to the topic in a few minutes, and then we have the presentation. Hopefully, we'll be able to finish 1.5 hours, 1 hour 45 minutes max. I hope I won't speak more than 30 minutes today. Because in any case, the matter of quantitative research is fairly, very straightforward. It's just to look at the techniques as well. And the speaker, the seminar presenter for today, has shared with you what he intends to focus on in his presentation. So what I'm just going to do is just to give some introductory remarks that should guide our discussion, both in this session and in the seminar presentation. I'm hoping that today we're going to achieve the following. One is to understand the role of quantitative methods in historical research. And let me just give it to you upfront that quantitative methods are not alternatives. They are complementary, okay? They are not supposed to give you that this is one way and that's another way. No. When you use quantitative methods, it's supposed to back up the narratives that qualitative methods will give you. It's supposed to give you statistical, data-driven data-driven materials that will help you to justify the narratives that you give when you do qualitative studies. So just understand that it's supposed to provide statistical data narrative that will complement your judgments, because most of qualitative work is interpretative. It's interpretative and could be subjective. So your data will back up your interpretation when you combine the two. It's not every research that you will require quantitative methods to back it up. It's not every research. But for many, when you look at population growth, when you look at economic development, you're looking at health initiatives, you're looking at pandemics, looking at history of health development in the particular society, looking at the history of educational development, the growth of institutions, the growth of health institutions, then you need the statistics, you need the data to back up. You look at the challenges. So then you should be able to look at the key approaches in historical are used in historical study, the key quantitative approaches. Yeah, basically three of them. We'll go to them in the next few minutes. Then learn how to collect, analyze, and interpret data using quantitative methods. That's the essence of what we're doing. It's supposed to help you to be able to produce a good thesis and embark upon a research career if you so like in future. You can. Like we said earlier in the course, historical research methods is not just for historians. It's not just for historical research. It can help you in many other areas, many other disciplines. If you're a journalist, for instance, you need the tools of historical research to be able to gather data, analyze data, interpret data. So it's not just for you as a historian, but for you as a professional, particularly in the humanities. These are tools that will be very useful for you, most of the professions in which you engage in. I was discussing with a colleague, a classmate, undergraduate classmate yesterday. I mean, he had moved from his core work in English to being the director of external relations of a company. But most of the work he's doing are things that it requires to do research to be able to present the image of the company. So when you are making presentations like that, you need the tools of historical research to help you to move it. So analyze how to collect, analyze, and interpret data using quantitative methods. For instance, if you are looking at a non-government organization, for instance, maybe one of these agencies, organizations in reproductive health, and you want to make a case for support with international donors, international support partners, you should be able to provide statistical data on what you have achieved with what you have done so far. So if they gave you $100,000 last year, what did you achieve with it? How many people did you reach? These are tools that you can gather from this kind of course, how to be able to analyze your data and to present your data. And then analyze the strengths and limitations of quantitative methods in historical research. Just 5 basic things we are doing today, looking at the definitions and the key features and techniques, which is a key area. Number one is the key thing we are going to do today, the key features and the techniques of quantitative methods in historical research. And then what are the sources of data? Basically two primary sources and then the digitized sources. Then strengths and limitations of quantitative methods, and then do some concluding remarks before we go into the seminar. Are there questions, comments so far? Are there things you'd like to know before we proceed? Things that you think will serve you? If you want some explanations as to what we're trying to achieve, I will just take it on. Otherwise, question, what is quantitative research? What are quantitative methods? Okay. What does it mean when you say something is quantitative? Very simple. It relates to numbers, it relates to data, it relates to statistical analysis. We are dealing with figures. So when you say you are doing quantitative, you're able to quantify. It's very straightforward. You're able to quantify the figures, quantify the statistics, quantify the data, something you can see. This is different from what is qualitative, which is descriptions and interpretation, which could be very, very subjective. This is taking it out from historical research. When you say something is quantitative, we know what it means, that you are dealing with figures, you are dealing with statistics, you are dealing with something you can quantify, something you can count, which if all of us can't, except somebody is being fraudulent, we are going to get the same result. If I put 10 apples down and ask you to count, if somebody gets 9, meaning that he has stolen one and put it in his pocket. So these things are verifiable, okay? Which is opposed to qualitative, which is subjective, which is interpretive. Traditional historical research involves qualitative approaches, interpreting text, narratives. These are things that we do normally. And then, but under qualitative, we do the use of numerical data and statistics to analyze historical phenomena. So when we're talking about quantitative method in historical research, it's referring to the deployment of statistical techniques, the use of statistical techniques, deploying it to historical data, use of numerical data and statistical analysis to study historical phenomena. For many of us, when you talk about figures, we tune off. But today, they have come again. Many of us as students, particularly in humanities, when it comes to statistics, mathematics, figures, logic, we tune off, okay? But it's not as esoteric as we want to make it, okay? So using it to interpret historical data, the techniques can give you even good results, more than you even imagine. Now, I said earlier, quantitative method is a complementary approach, okay? It's not a replacement. It's not a replacement for qualitative. It's not something that replaces what has been in place before. No, it complements the approach. It provides different insights. It provides alternative perspectives, okay? It doesn't replace it. Let's have it at the back of our minds that quantitative is complementary, not alternative. It's not competing with it, it's complementing it. So when you are doing your research, don't say, oh, I'm using qualitative approach, I don't have anything to do with quantitative methods. Oh, I'm just using quantitative methods, I'm not using, no. There is hardly any historical research that you will do that you may not be referring to facts that you can verify in terms of increase in numbers. But so when you're talking about quantitative data, you're looking at things like census records for population studies. For those of you who are looking at migration, for instance, you look at market shifts, you look at rural-urban migration, you look at child labor, for instance. All these things are things that you get from census records or other economic data. These are things using demographic studies to study the movement of populations across societies. Election results, trade statistics. Election results can teach you a lot about voter behavior, about voter pattern, voter conduct in the society. So whichever way you look at it, there are many areas where quantitative data will serve our purpose. All this, the economic statistics, the trade statistics, trade figures, census results, these are all things that everybody can count, everybody can be verified and can be very useful. Take, for instance, birth records, okay? Birth records, if you go to any national population office, say birth records for if a district 2000 to 2020, go to the office, they bring out the files for you, you can see it, and you can look at the pattern yourself. So these are numerical data that can both be verified and be quantified. But again, be very careful because there could be some figures that may have been twisted for political purpose. Take, for instance, census figures. Realize that we've had issues with census figures in Nigeria over the years. We've had serious issues. It has not been accepted. The only census that has been found to be acceptable in the country was conducted during the colonial era, 1953. After that, 1962 census, 1973 census, every figure has been disputed, which is why today, when we want to talk about the United Nations say that our population is this, the World Bank says our population, because we've not been able to count ourselves. So sometimes those figures can also be politically manipulated. So you have to be very careful. Yes, there are things you can verify. So when the UN says Nigeria is 200 million, where did they get the figures? Where? They've never conducted census in Nigeria. They are using projections from way back 53, 63. Okay, so these are things that we have to be very, very careful about. Now, what are the key features of quantitative research? These are the kind of techniques, the kind of things we are going to do. This is where we are going to concentrate. Number one is data-driven analysis. I know I don't have to start saying too much about that. Data-driven analysis, that is, quantitative research focuses on measurable variables, the things you can measure, the things you can count, population figures. Okay, like I just analyzed, population figures can be contested. Okay, it's also part of the issues we even have in trying to understand ourselves as a nation. Why is it that we have not been able to count ourselves acceptably? When you say the figure of a state is this, have they counted the cattle in the place as well? Or they've counted what do you call it, the cows and the rams in the place? That's how they made up the number. It's because we don't even trust the process. We don't even trust what we are doing. We ourselves, we just, so we have these issues with trust. When was it under Jonathan, and they said Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa, even we Nigerians were querying the figures. That's, what do you mean largest economy? That we cannot even see the impact in our lives. But for you as a historian, you can look at, you get to correlation studies, or you look at regression analysis, you'll be able to see what is the correlation between our increasing, your so-called expanding economy, and the quality of life. Or you look at the migration of Nigerian students, the population migration of Nigerian students, or Nigerian youth out of the country in an economy that's supposed to be booming, to be expanding. So we get to ask ourselves, can this thing be true? If our economy is expanding, if our economy is growing as big as they are claiming, if things are as rosy as they are claiming, if things are as good as they are claiming, why are Nigerians voting with their feet out of the country? Look at the figures of migration. You can look at the figures of those who apply for visa in other countries. Most embassies will make available to you the number of applicants they take every year. They give you the number of figures, the number of applicants, they approve their visa. You can look at the correlation between the so-called booming economy in Nigeria and the migration pattern. These are things that you need statistics to be able to do. So it's data-driven analysis, measurable variables, election results, economic indicators, then statistical techniques, of course. The second feature of quantitative research is the use of statistical techniques. That is regression analysis, correlation studies, and descriptive statistics. I'll go to that in a minute. And then the third element is hypothesis testing, okay? Examining the causal relationship between trends, okay? You look at the economy has done this. Can you prove it? So that's in a minute. So let's look at data-driven analysis. When you say quantitative research is propelled by data-driven analysis. Now, data-driven analysis in historical research, historical analysis prioritizes the use of measurable, numerical, or structured data to study historical phenomena. this approach shifts from purely narrative interpretations to empirical investigations. And it allows us as historians to identify the trends, to compare populations and quantify change over time. When you do data-driven analysis, you can look at how things have evolved over time. Okay, you look at trends. Okay, either trends in the economy or trends in population, trends in migration. You can rural urban migration, trends in agricultural production. These are things that you can look at the quantification of change over the time. How much of food are we importing? How much of grains are we importing? How much of oil, palm oil are we importing in the country that is producing it? These are things you can look at. The key aspects of data-driven analysis, structured data, that is, variables that can be systematically recorded. Okay, you can look at the birth rates, you can look at the death rates, look at wages, emoluments in society, and ownership, giving up, literacy levels in the country. And part of these things also affect other things. So you can track your literacy levels over the years and connect it to life expectancy. That when people are more learned, are they likely to engage in behaviors that will elongate their lives? When people are illiterate, are they likely to engage in activities that will endanger their lives? For instance, I used to say that things like flooding, for instance, sometimes they are products of illiteracy. Because if you are aware of the consequences of your action, you are not likely to do it. When people decide to pack their garbage, their trash, and throw them on the pathway of the water, okay, it's because they don't know that it's going to block the drainage and it's going to cause flooding eventually. But people do things. So when you study the Ogunpa River, for instance, the number of deaths the number of deaths caused at different times of flood, how many times do we have the floods in a year, or how many times in a 10-year cycle do we have floods in Lokoja, in Ibadan, whatever. You can be able to trace also the impact of educational levels, that the more people become learned, more literate, the more they engage in behaviors that are health promoting. These are things that one can connect over the years. And the sources, of course, primary records, we've mentioned them, census data, tax registers, partial records. For instance, you can't dismiss the records of churches. Most churches have birth registers. I personally, I have a baptismal certificate from my church. Far back in 73, when I had my baptism. And it's in the record of the church. So when you are tracing some things, the church can also help you. Indeed, one of the best archives in the world is the CMS archives in Oxford. Okay, where you can get data on schools, on churches, on hospitals, on populations where they've had an impact. So these are things. So these are records, primary records, generated by those that were involved in producing them. The tax office, you can go and although, take for instance, in the United States, the taxpayers' information is private. So you need some special dispensation to get it released by the tax office. The tax registers are there. And we don't have that kind of restriction in our country. So can people look at the tax register compared with the voter list in a particular place and see whether Nigerians are actually paying taxes or whether the taxpayers are actually voting? Why is there no taxation without representation? How many people are voting? How many people are paying taxes? So all of these figures you can get. Trade logs, military conscription lists, particularly during the Nigerian Civil War, people were conscripted to join the Civil War. Young people in their 16, 17, 18 were joining the army under conscription. And the list and see the impact on the society. The secondary databases include digitized archives, where some of the information that we are talking about are already processed and sometimes selected. I have to be careful because sometimes the information that is presented has been redacted. That is something taken away from it. So many times what we have are redacted information. Okay, I have to be very careful with that as a historian who is using statistics, who is using figures to prove your point. Now, what are the strengths? Supposed to be objectivity. It reduces your reliance on subjective interpretations and reduces your reliance on anecdotal evidence because you have concrete figures, statistics to deal with. And then scalability. Okay, you can look at patterns over the years. You can see and look at the long time process over the years. So when you are tracking voter behavior, you can start with maybe the pre-independence elections, go to 1962, 63 elections, look at 1979, 78, 79, look at 1983, those for election cycles, so you can see patterns of, so it's scalable. It's something that can apply to other areas. But the challenges are also there. Data fragmentation. Okay? Many times the records are incomplete. Sometimes they are biased. Sometimes the records are deliberately kept incomplete. If it's not going to favor a particular area. Take, for instance, the 1963 census, 62 census, 63 census. Figures are suppressed for particular regions. In the 1993 census in Nigeria, when they gave figures for Lagos, which were lower than that for Kano, everybody said, how can? How can? So sometimes the figures themselves are fragmented, sometimes they are distorted, sometimes they are biased in the collation, sometimes they are selective. Okay, so you have to be very careful with data fragmentation. And then sometimes, then the loss of the context. The problem with data-driven analysis, like even quantification method entirely, is that numbers alone don't speak the total truth. Numbers alone may not give you the total picture, the global picture. Take, for instance, who said he was working on IDPs? Someone one of his said they were working on IDPs. Was it last week or week before? Okay, that they said they trekked from the war-torn areas in Maiduguri, Borno, Yobe area to Abuja. Okay, now the figures can tell you how many IDPs were there that left from Yobe or Bauchi or Maiduguri for Abuja. The figures, but it doesn't tell you the personal stories. You know, the individual losses, loss of income, loss of livelihood, loss of relations. Figures cannot tell you the personal experiences of individuals. You need to talk to those people. You need to see the documentation of how they survived at that time. So the figures can reduce the whole discussion, okay, to impassive numbers. You reduce the story to numbers, but history is more than numbers. History is about people, it's about societies, it's about communities. So that is why you cannot jettison the qualitative, the qualitative because you have the quantitative. You're talking of Mansa Musa, who traveled from his empire on pilgrimage to Mecca and took gold with us. Current historian will tell you that what he did was money laundering. Uh, he was carrying the wealth of his country to another country. Okay. But in the process, there were communities established. Even in Nigeria, many Nigerians who went to Mecca have their communities now in Sudan and in other countries. Those who did not go by air, they form new communities in other places. So you can look at the figures in one sense, but the long-term effect on individuals, on families, on lives, on communities, you will not be able to capture it when you are looking just at the figures. So the context of those figures is very important. Okay. So the second feature is statistical techniques. Okay. Of course, as it says, statistical techniques transform raw historical data into meaningful patterns that you can analyze. Okay. So the statistical techniques helps you to test relations between variables, identify anomalies, and model historical processes. And there are four common techniques. Number one is descriptive statistics. That is, it summarizes, oh, 10 people did this in 2045, 11 people did it in 2046. Every year we add how many people apply for visa, the total number who apply for visa in the US Embassy in 2018 is this. Those who got the figures are this. So it just summarizes and it gives you the trends. Okay. You can see that, oh, in 2010, there were 50 Nigerian students in UK. By 2015, it had increased to 100. In 2010, there were 15 Nigerian doctors applied for registration in the UK to practice. By 10 years later, the figure. So you can look at the figures description. And it tells you a story. It tells you a story. It gives you the frequency. It gives you the cumulation. It gives you the pattern over the year. So that is one approach. That's one technique. A second one is regression analysis. That is, you look at relationship between two variables. There will be a primary variable that you look at its impact on other variables, the regression analysis. So take, for instance, rural-urban migration. You want to, or look at industrialization, or look at the economic oil boom. Okay, Nigeria economic oil boom as one factor. What has been the correlation between the expanding oil industry in Nigeria and rural-urban migration? Okay, you are looking at the one factor has impacted other areas. Okay, so you look at the impact of one independent variables on others. So the economic oil boom and our agricultural sector, the economic oil boom and rural urban migration, our economic sector and child labor in the country, our economic oil boom and the depopulation of societies, of fishes, of aquatic life in the Niger Delta. All of this you can. So that's regression analysis. It's not the same as correlation studies. Correlation studies look at two different variables. Okay. So you measure associations. Okay. Let's say, for instance, like I put here, look at literacy levels and political participation. Okay, in our elections. So you can look at how has the impact of how has the introduction of the basic education system that made it compulsory for children to be in school to JS3, how has it affected the voter behavior in the country? And all people who are now educated exercising their franchise. I don't know whether I'm making some sense to you. So, correlation studies is to look at the impact between two factors. And I look at what they are. Spatial analysis, where you look at maps, okay? When you look at maps and geostatistics, geographic patterns, okay? Look at pattern of rainfall between the north the south, or between the middle belt, the Niger Delta, and the middle. You can look at regional variations in electoral matters. You can look at regional variations in the spread of diseases. Okay, so when you take the map of Nigeria and say, in Kano, more people died of COVID-19 than in Sokoto. Why? Because you can see the pattern. Then you begin to ask yourself, what is the difference? Take, for instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were people dying in Kano, okay, more than any other part of the country. But they went at pace to explain that it wasn't due to COVID-19, but it was due to the outbreak of other things. So when you look at the spatial analysis, geospatial analysis is also very important. So these are all statistical techniques. Now, what are the strengths, okay, and weaknesses of statistical techniques? Of course, the major strength is precision, okay? Statistical techniques, they quantify the strength and signal relationships. For instance, you say, oh, communities where 90% of the children, or 80% of the children, or 70% of the children were immunized against polio, were immunized with the polio vaccination, grew up without having polio ravaging the community, as compared with those communities where immunization was short. These are things we can talk with precision. So when you look at Kano, for instance, when they had this rejection of vaccination and polio was increasing, it's a precision study. If this happened as it's likely to happen, okay, then it's replicability. It can be repeated by other researchers. The figures you use can be used by another person. Okay, you can come to a different interpretation of your figures. So, the less time is running. It's 10:46. Okay, so precision, replicability are two strengths of statistical techniques. But then it also has its weakness. Sometimes you overfit models. There is that risk of tailoring your statistical model to fit your data, okay, rather than to reflect historical reality. So people are looking for models to fit data or data to fit models just because they want to tell a particular story. And that happens a lot, particularly when you are trying to impress with your figures. The accountants will tell you that when they present the accountant's report, there is a report for the auditors, there's a report for the shareholders, there's a report for the banks, there's a report for the public. The same statistics from the same bank. So when in 2009, or was it 2009, 2010, the CBN hammered a number of banks for not being in good financial standing. Somebody asked the question, but by December last year, just a month, 2 months ago, all their auditors gave rosy figures, rosy reports of their financial capability. So what has happened is because somebody somewhere has presented figures that were not in tune with reality. So if as a historian, you are studying the banking industry, you have to be careful with some of those things. And then it's possible for misinterpretation. Correlation is not always causation. It's not always causation because there is a correlation between two independent variables. Does not mean that one is the cause of the other. And there is this joke that a rise in church attendance, okay, coinciding with rise in crime rates in a region, okay, one does not cause the other. Because people are now attending church does not mean that they're the ones committing the crime. It could be a different factor that is responsible, which is most likely to be population growth. So population growth can cause different things and cause different consequences. So when you have population growth, there may be larger rural urban migration, and with higher population in the urban areas, crime is likely to go up. But at the same time, church attendance will also go up because more people are moving from their churches in the rural area to churches in the urban areas. So you have increase in the number of people attending churches, but at the same time, you have increase in the number of people committing crimes. You cannot say it's because it's people attending churches that they're committing crime. So it's possible to misinterpret the correlation. The third feature is hypothesis testing. That is, moving from the level of the figures to be able to now ask questions. If this has happened, what will happen? Okay. Hypothesis testing is what introduces rigor, scientific rigor, to historical inquiry. You can formulate specific falsifiable claims about the past and then use quantitative data to evaluate the validity. So it moved the discussion from what happened to why, or to what next. Okay. Now, what is the process of hypothesis testing? One is to formulate the hypothesis. Okay. And then you define the variables. And then you test with data. Okay. So we formulate an hypothesis. Example, the emergence of the oil industry in Nigeria in the 1970s led to increased rural urban migration in the country. It's an hypothesis. Then you have to prove it. You said it does this. That is your proposal. That's your suggestion. Then you now have to define the variables to measure the indicators. Your variables might include migration growth, migration rates. It might include the number of crimes, the crime rates in the urban areas. It might include even church attendance in urban areas, so that it is the consequence of this. So we define the variables that if we want to prove this hypothesis, we are going to look at one, the number of people attending churches and mosques in the urban areas. We want to look at the population of urban areas over the years. We want to look at the migration rate, look at rural urban. So you look at the variables, and then when you have defined the variables, for those of you in M&E, you define the variables, now you test it with data. Okay? If this has happened, then what are the statistics to back it up, to assess whether the evidence supports the hypothesis? So very straightforward, but it doesn't mean that that is what you must do with your own research. Okay, what are the strengths? Of course, rigorous inquiry forces clarity on arguments and reliance on evidence. You have to use evidence to prove your point. It's not just something that you make assertions and get away with. Then it helps you to debunk myths. When you say that Nigerians hardly travel, it's records. People are moving, people are on the way, people are on the road. There was not much travel or urbanization during the colonial period. Prove it with real figures. Of course, the challenges, oversimplification, possible oversimplification. That is, you can't reduce some complex events to a single variable. Take, for instance, the 1983 elections in Nigeria and the violence that accompanied it, the mass murder, the killings, the burnings, the lootings that accompanied it. You realize that it's not just one factor that triggered it. That there might have been simmering anger in the society about other things. So when people respond to particular things, you don't use that singular variable as the cause. Okay? So there could be several other factors involved, several other factors that determine the final outcome that you are seeing. When we look at the movement of doctors abroad, it's not every case, or even the migration of people out of the country. It's not every case. It's not every case that is due to economic consideration. There are families that have had to move because of the medical needs of their children. So you have to be careful with your hypothesis because it reduces, things to figures and numbers, which may not. Then, of course, there are ethical pitfalls. When you are hypothesizing about economic benefits of colonialism, you are treading on dangerous grounds. So we have to be careful with the ethics sometimes. Let's wind up, okay? How do we synergize these three elements? Okay, we talked about data-driven analysis, we've spoken about statistical techniques, and we've spoken about hypothesis testing. Data-driven analysis will provide you with the raw material, will tell you the figures, the statistical patterns, the statistical techniques will uncover the patterns in those raw materials, okay, while the hypothesis structures the inquiry and validates interpretation. So let's take an example. A study on the emergence of the oil industry in Nigeria 56 to 1990 might collect data on oil production, revenue patterns, decline in agricultural production. But under statistical techniques, your regression analysis can link the oil economy to declining food productivity. So you can see the pattern. So they all work together, and then you can test the hypothesis like oil economy caused a 70% decline in Nigerian agricultural output. So it's not as if these three features can work independently and on their own. In actual fact, you have a more robust approach when you try to integrate the three. Let's try to round up. So what are the sources of data in quantitative research? Primary data, we've mentioned the primary records, sensor data, tax tools, trade ledgers, parish registers, conscription lists, so many of them. All of these things. And then there are digitized archives. Okay? Projects like the Digital Pan-African Archives, UNESCO World Digital Library can facilitate access to digital structured historical data. So just know that it's not something that is esoteric. Okay? Many you have to collate or source on your own, but then some are already available in digitized forms. Where do you apply them? Of course, economic history is the most obvious. There is a whole Department of Economic History at London School of Economics, which is not, it's not under Department of History, it's a department on its own. Economic history, study trade volumes, price fluctuation, labor market, so many things you can study on the economy that you can apply quantitative methods to. In fact, cliometrics is one particular method you use here. So at the end of the day, economic history is one area where in fact, no, you can't even argue about it anyway, where you use quantitative methods. Of course, social history, population movements, migration patterns, social mobility, democratic shifts, all these are in social history, and they all require figures. Of course, also in political history, it's also possible when you look at voter behavior, legislative changes, all of these things. So you can apply quantitative methods in these three critical areas of social research: economic history, social history, political history. You can apply them. So what are the challenges? Of course, we've mentioned data limitations, incomplete record biases, uh, undercounting, digitization orders. Sometimes your access may be limited. Uh, the availability can be a major issue because you might be looking for the figures and just not get them. You may get to the National Archives looking for the census figures for net. You want to look at population patterns, okay, in Nigeria, population shifts over the years. You want to compare the figures in this 53, 63, 73, and 93 census figures. And you get to the archives, a whole bunch is not available. Or you want to look at economic production in the country, economic development in the country, the statistics for generated for the National Development Plan of 1974. You can't find it there. What do you do? And you still need to produce your work. So data could be incomplete, could be unavailable at all, and could be incomplete. You may not be able to identify them, may be able to quantify what you're looking for. So the quality of data can be suspect. And sometimes you may have to digitize it yourself. On convert qualitative information to quantitative data. Maybe you are working with on a particular matter. You don't have the figures directly, but by the time you speak to 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, you have a fair idea of what it is. Then you can begin to quantify yourself. So it may not work well. It may add to your work, so it makes things a little more difficult for you. Then, most importantly, all historical questions can be answered quantitatively. It's not everything that is subject to facts, to numbers, to statistics and figures. It's not everything. When you are talking about cultural memory, you're talking about intellectual history of a country, you're talking about the development of societies, the growth of the monarchy and all that, or the growth of the palace. These are not, you are looking at festivals. They're not really quantitative, but more qualitative in terms of description. So not all questions can be answered in terms of figures. Of course, we mentioned oversimplification when we were discussing one of the approaches the other time. Reducing complex phenomena to numbers, we neglect cultural and narrative context. Indeed, reducing complex events to numbers oversimplifies the nuances. You begin to is it disregard or downplay, or you don't attach the right importance to it. And then, of course, the ethical concerns, interpreting sensitive data. Yeah, I thought I was for 30, 45 minutes, but I think we've gone almost 50 minutes. So, in conclusion, before our seminar presenter will give us a more comprehensive report, a comprehensive presentation, let's know it that quantitative method in social research involves systematically collecting and analyzing numerical data from historical sources to identify patterns, to test hypotheses, and to draw conclusions. Okay, you use your figures to look at patterns, you look at summative patterns, summative totals, test hypothesis. Was this a consequence of that? And you draw your conclusions. It's used alongside qualitative methods to provide a more comprehensive understanding of historical events and trends. Like I said earlier, Quantitative data are not meant to replace qualitative. They complement. And like we said last week, when we were looking at qualitative approach, that they complement each other. We'll look at the difference between qualitative and quantitative last, so we're not going to repeat them now. So they are complementary, not competitive. They are complementary, not alternatives. They are complementary, not one will replace the other. So quantitative methods bring empirical discipline to recurrent research, but the effectiveness depends on balancing numbers with you should be able to balance your numbers with the context, the historical context, the circumstances in which those figures you are banding about, the circumstances in which they were generated. So why data-driven analysis, statistics, and hypothesis testing reveal what happened? The figures will tell you that, oh, so number of people did this. Oh, the trade levels were this. Many people died during the COVID-19 pandemic. Or more people died during Ebola than COVID-19, meaning that Ebola was more devastating than COVID-19. That's the hypothesis. Okay? It tells you what happened, but doesn't tell you why. Okay? It is the qualitative insights that tell you why what happened, why it happened. Okay? And that interplay of qualitative and quantitative ensures that historians like you and I, we avoid reductionism while we harness the power of data to illustrate and illuminate the past. You need data. As a historian, you cannot just dismiss data. You don't have head for figures. Please go and get the head though. Because sometimes you need to tell us things in terms that we can relate to. But then don't reduce everything to figures. Don't reduce everything to data. Don't reduce everything to statistics. Look at the human angle, the human dimension, the human impact of the story. I don't know whether you have comments now, questions before we take the presentation. Comments, questions before we take the presentation. Are
Sir,
we? Yeah, Akode?
yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Please, can you re-show the last slide of the challenges and criticism, sir?
Oh, just a moment.
Yes, sir. The last slide, sir.
Just a moment. Yeah, I'll get it back to your screen now.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Just a moment. I'll get it back to your screen now. Last slide of the challenges and criticisms, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, what have I done? Can you see it?
Okay, sir.
Is this the one you're looking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you copying it or what?
Yes, sir.
Problem. That's fine. Any other comments? I will take it off now.
Yes, sir. You can, sir.
Okay, so questions, comments. Okay, it seems that Everybody is mute today. Are we okay to go into the seminar session? Are we? Eh, Can we then proceed to the seminar? Ama, who is presenting? Can we present? Can we go to the seminar?
Okay, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Or at least I can hear you. So
Okay. Sir, before the seminar presentation, sir, first of all, I need to tender my own reserved apology for my conduct last week. Actually, I don't intend to, annoy you or, make you feel uncomfortable, because in this class, I've learned a lot, and I will not want something that will provoke you to the extent that you will not be able to continue to remold and reshape us towards being a good researcher and also being a good academician, because it's not an easy thing for you to take the pain. And even, despite the fact that you are not, busy and you are not even on grant, and you are able to even, be consistent in terms of your impartition of, ideas, is something that is commendable. And I must sincerely apologize for my conduct, sir. Now, sir, let me proceed on my seminar presentation titled Interdisciplinary Approach to Historical, Interdisciplinary Approach, a study of quantitative method. I look at, interdisciplinary approach from the perspective of how history borrow ideas from other places, particularly the social science, in terms of, reconstructing the past. Because the issue of research is not something that is limited alone to the technique that we historians have. So now, for instance, the issue of interdisciplinary approach has been in existence, and it has also been particularly the issue of, between the social science and the humanity. There has also, been a challenge which some historians see, the social scientists as if maybe they are trying to, like, impose their own idea. But reality has come to say that there are some things we can learn from the social science. For instance, the issue of, quantitative approach, the issue of qualitative approach, and others that we can also use in aiding our own research. Now, the first one is what is quantitative method? Why use quantitative method? How to use quantitative method? What are the challenges of quantitative method? What are some of example of quantitative method? These are some of the things that I intend to, like, structure my own work on. The issue of quantitative method started, it's not something, as I said earlier, it's not something that started now. It has been in existence. For instance, quantitative techniques have evolved from ancient mathematical model in modern statistic analysis, with significant development in the 19th and 20th centuries. The rise of computers has dramatically enhanced the ability to process large data sets and utilize complex statistical methods. Today, these techniques are fundamental in various fields for testing hypotheses and informing decisions based on data. Now, with what is on ground now, historians, we don't need to, resist ourselves to, our own techniques of historiography. We need the ideal of programming. mathematics, statistics, ideal of other techniques that can aid, that can aid our research in the collection of data and information and analyzing it. Now, characteristics of quantitative research, characteristics of historical research. Use of numbers, use of numerical data and statistic tools, emphasizing on objectivity and replicability, focus on large-scale trend rather than individual narrative, application of mathematical model and computation techniques. What I'm trying to say in essence is that with the quantitative ideas, which have, from my slide, I try to bring some expert definition of it to show how it works, what it's all about. It's all about, using figures and using other methods, particularly, with more emphasis on mathematics and statistics. Now, the second stage is the type of quantitative research, where we have time series analysis, cross-examination analysis, and panel data analysis. By time analyzing economy data over time to analyze, identify trend and pattern circles, comparing economy data across different regions, country and industry at a single point in time. Panel data analysis, combining time series and cross-examination data to analyze economic phenomena over time and across different units. Are you with me, sir? Okay. Now, the other aspect that I want to discuss on is sources of data. Sources of data, we have historical statistics, archival record, POSIT data, digital data, debt registration, account ledgers, diary, birth registration, voter registration, and so on. These are the method, or the avenue whereby the data of quantitative method can be derived for the writing of history and analyzing of the objective of our aim in the research for the quantitative. Techniques are method.
Take it easy. Don't rush yourself.
Okay. Yes. Quantitative historical research, grounded in a positivist epistemology, involve the empirical testing of hypotheses through systematic observation and numerical analysis. As a specialized area with historical studies, it applies statistic method and computer-assisted tools to data sets such as census figure and election results. This methodological approach, often referred to as quantitative history, entails identifying patterns and trends through statistical evaluation of historical records, including economic indicators and demographic statistics. By applying these tools to historical sources, scholars can derive more nuanced insight into past events. John John Graham emphasized the growing necessity of humanity scholars in grasping the implication of digital technology, not only in terms of data analysis, but also in understanding how data platform and algebra are reshaping traditional forms of scholarship. Similar view at quantitative history as a product of 1950s and 1960s, when historians from social, political, and economy subfield began incorporating social science methodology into their work. This cross-pollination also prompted social scientists to historicize their research. Anderson described quantitative history as a suite of techniques used in analyzing historical data statistically, a perspective shared by economic historian who refers to this approach as clometoric. Likewise, Thomas Lassen associates the emergence of quantitative method with the rise of computational technology in 1960, while scholars like Polytestoris and point to the ever-expanding availability of digital resources as a major enabler of such method. Now, quantitative data collections. We have surveys, we have poll, we have experiments. By surveying, I try to define it. Means a survey is one of the most common research methods with quantitative data that involve questioning a large group of people. Questions are usually cross-ended and are the same for all participants, and unclear questionnaires can lead to distorting research outcome. Polls, similar to survey, poll yield quantitative data. That is, you use poll a number of people and apply a numerical value to how many people responded with each answer. Experiment. An experiment is another common method that usually involve a control group and an experimental group. The experiment is controlled and the condition can be manipulated accordingly. You can examine any type of record involved if they pertain to experiment, so that the experiment is extensive. Application of quantitative research. Growth and development. Analyze the factors that contribute to economic growth and development over time. The second is crisis and instability. Studying the causes and consequences of economic crisis, such as depression, repression, and financial crisis. Third is globalization and trade. Examine the historical pattern and trend in international trade and globalization. Method and techniques of quantitative research. We have regression analysis. Examine the relationship between economic variables using statistical model. Econometrics, applying statistical method to economic data to test hypotheses and estimate relationship. Machine learning, using to analyze large data sets and identifying pattern of economic history. Advantage of quantitative historical research. Enhance objectivities and reduce bias. facilitate comparative historical analysis, identify patterns and long-term trend, enable replication and verification of findings. Challenges and limitations. Data's quality and availability. Methodological challenge, interpretation and context. Difficulties in analyzing certain historical aspects. Risk of oversimplification and loss of conceptual depth. Potential bias in historical recording. Conclusion. While quantitative method present certain challenges, they have undeniably reshaped historical research, introducing new forms of data, techniques and perspective. These developments compel historians to reconsider their approaches to knowledge production. The use of theory is vital for organizing historical data in a structured and analytical manner. Interdisciplinary approach in particular encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing, specialization in a rapid globalizing academic landscape. Such collaboration not only enhance scholarship productivity, but also ensure that historical research remain relevant and robust. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I listened with interest, and basically I'm pleased with the coverage. Although you could have structured the presentation better, I don't know whether it's because you are panicking or you're anxious, but this is a class of equals, so you are not supposed to be afraid of your colleagues. But I hope that when I read the submitted version, it won't show the panic in your tone and the anxiety. And by the way, you don't have any problem with me at all. Yes, I'm not pleased when students don't concentrate or listen to instructions in class. Yes, I am not pleased at all. I don't like repeating myself when it comes to giving instructions, and that is for everybody. When I say come to class on time and you don't show up, I may not say anything, but it registers an impression in my head about the kind of person you are. So just be careful that before you make comments, find out from your colleagues if you are not in the class or if you couldn't follow whatever happened. Because what it shows is that you are not concentrating, or you're absent-minded, or you just dismissed whatever notices we put. When I put notice on the chat room, on the WhatsApp platform, it's meant for the attention of the members. When you put things there, I read them myself because I'm a member of the class as a teacher. I read them, and I expect you to read and interpret whatever I put online. So there's no problem. You don't have to worry about me. You can't provoke me not to be interested in doing the work I'm paid to do.
Thank you, sir.
Don't thank me for teaching you. That's my job. That's what they're paying that miserable salary for. So, okay, so comments from the class. Because I said he has done a good job doesn't mean that you don't have any comments. So let's have your comments, let's have your questions, because the issues are the same. The issues are the same on the role of data, the role of statistics, the role of figures in the interpretation of history, in the writing of history. The issues are the same, and the caution that he also sounded are the same in terms of over-reliance on data can lead to oversimplification. And oversimplification is not something that is good in terms for your interpretation. And that is why you must always look at not just the quantitative, but also the qualitative perspective of issues. Yes, the qualitative is subject to interpretation. Yes, that's what it does. Actually, is interpretation. Yes, it is subject to uh, abuse, it's subject to subjectivity, but you can't do history without subjectivity. You just have to give your own perspective. I want to ask you a question. In your own view, why did you think the Second World War took place? I'm asking for your view, not the view of other scholars. Just tell us why. Just back it up. So statistics, data, very useful, gives you objective figures to work with, particularly if those figures have been generated fairly. Uh, Take, for instance, the voting figures, the electoral figures in the country. You can be sure that you may not be able to get the same figures from different political parties for the same election. So you have to be careful with the interpretation. So comments, questions, Akonde, Adewale, Fatai, comments, questions. Mr. Bankup, I think that's Chiforo Luwagwe. Your name is not Bankup in this class, so otherwise I won't register your presence. So better know that.
Sorry, sir. It's so sometimes when I don't have, sir, it's when I have challenges with my network that I have to use this one, sir. That's why, sir.
No
Sorry, sir.
problem. No, just show your face so that we know it is you there, not Mr. Bankup. So, or is it Chief Bankup?
I'm very
Which one
sorry,
now?
sir.
Don't be sorry.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah. Comments, please. Let's have your comments. Is half past what now? Half past 5? Or is that past 4? Which one? What is it, 7? Yeah.
4:30.
Half past
Yeah.
4.
So we still have 30 minutes. If you don't want to use your 30 minutes, I'm very free. So I can go and do other things with my life. I have things to write. Ahmad, I'm not asking you questions, though. Or did you send them to sleep?
Sir?
I said, I'm not asking you questions. Did you send them to sleep?
Not at all, sir.
How do you know you didn't send them to sleep?
No,
Why are they
sir.
not talking? Or they don't like you?
I
We
don't
are
think
not
so.
active, sir. Or personally, I have no question. That's why I'm not saying anything, sir.
Yeah. You're satisfied with what you presented?
Yes, sir. 100%, sir.
Yes, sir, because
100%.
he has shared it on the platform, so we had the opportunity to go through it before the class.
Everything you read is perfect. No comments.
You'll be
Right?
the one to judge that, sir. Not us, sir.
When I'm going to judge, we won't be able to say anything at that time. This time we can share the ideas now. We can talk now. We can share ideas and argue and everything. But when I have to read your script for marking purpose, you cannot argue with me at that time. This is how we can argue. This is how we can share ideas. This is how we can ask ourselves questions. But if you don't ask questions now, a time will come that you cannot ask questions. So when I'll be the one that will ask the question, all you have to do is just to answer. And it's me that will judge whether your answer is good enough or not. So better ask now. Yeah, it's okay. So in the absence of any other thing, note that we have a session next week that will be on digital humanities. In fact, it's a logical flow from this one. When you look at computing and its effect. I'll be giving this presentation straight on that one. Like nobody's making a presentation. And then the following week, there won't be a class because I won't be available given my schedule for that day. It's not like I'm I knew I won't be available that day, so I already put out that I won't be class on our schedule. The following Wednesday, the 16th, will be our first and possibly the only in-person class, because I do a lot of travel, and if I decide that I'm going to stay in Ife, I'm going to teach you when I'm in Ife, then we not have a class at all. So, but hopefully we'll be able to do other in-person classes at some point. So 16, we're going to have an in-person. I'll make sure I'm in Ife. I pray I will make sure I'm in Ife, because definitely have to be in Ife on the 17th anyway. I have to be in Ife on the 17th. So 17, 18, 19, that's the Easter weekend. I have to be in Ife for that period. So I should be in Ife for Wednesday. So we should be able to have our in-person class on that day. Other than that, I think we're okay. If there are no comments, no questions, I can dismiss the class. I can save your money for the data and do other things. Comments, questions. Thank you, Mr. Amma, for teaching us, for enlightening us. Who is the next person who is going to speak to the class? There are just one or two people more. Is it one person or two?
I think I'm the next student to speak on the next presentation, sir.
Okay.
That's
Adewale has
thematic and
spoken.
comparative approaches.
Eh?
That's thematic and comparative approaches, sir.
No, we already done thematic and comparative. Are you sure that's a topic? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yes, I'm looking at it right in front of me, sir. Samuel Okoyemi Akonde.
I hope you're looking at the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Just
Maybe I
give
should
me a
resend it to the group and okay, sir.
no, don't send anything. Let me check my schedule.
All right, sir.
Okay. Thematic and comparative approaches. That will be our first in-person class. You are lucky.
Ha, lucky.
Why? Are you not lucky?
Ah, maybe or maybe not, sir.
We'll be seeing each other physically now. Is it not
Ah,
lucky?
Hey,
Or you don't
I
want to
don't
see
think
my
it's
face?
lucky.
Don't worry. You
No,
are
I want
stuck
to
with
see
me.
you. I want to see
You
you,
are
we
sir,
want
stuck
to
but
with
see.
me to the end of this course.
presentation face to
We,
face is omo.
we want to see you, sir.
We want to see you, sir.
Even if I
We,
leave, if I will complete this course, I'll
Sir?
grade and send the script to the university. So don't worry.
sir, since you are going to be in Ife, since you are likely going to be in Ife over the Easter holiday, sir, is
What will happen? You want to see me during this holiday? His network is not even connecting. Imagine. So I'm around over this Easter weekend. If you want to see me, just come to my church. You see me in the church every day from Thursday evening to Sunday afternoon. So just come. You'll see me there. So I will invite you to the program. It's your choice. It's not part of the course requirement. So you can choose what to do. It's not compulsory. But if you want to see me, I'll be available there. I'm available at the campground. If you know Christway campground is on Elisha
Christ
Road.
way.
Yeah, the campground is on Elisha Road at Ilefufu, after Okpa, before Ushu,
Okay, sir.
before Ijesha land, before you start claiming
Okay,
our
sir.
land. But
I see, sir. Bro, you have eaten into our land. In fact, that's the serious issue that we are tending to in the palace. It's a serious
you,
issue. But if you send us a Google Map locations, I will be able to use it.
So that I can twist the thing on Google Map and say that Okpa belongs to Elisha.
Anyway, issue of boundary issue at this time, not at all, sir.
I tell you, it's very easy. If you are going on Elisha Road after the
Yes,
teaching
sir.
hospital,
Yes, sir.
you know Okpa.
Well, I really don't.
Okpa
But I know that after teaching us,
yeah, it's on your right.
yeah, after the
The
teaching
campground is on
hospital,
your
that's
right.
before Ifecity College.
It's after FSCT
Yes,
College.
sir.
It's after FSCT College. So
After Ifecity College, yes, sir.
well after, about 5-6 kilometers after.
Okay.
Before Alakowe.
Yes, before Alakowe.
Before Alakowe, you see the signboard on your right. As many as possible can come and meet me there.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. I'll be there. Anyway, we'll see on Wednesday by God's grace. That's the
By
16th.
God's grace.
Yeah,
Okay, sir.
I should come for the Thursday program. I should arrive in Nation on Wednesday. So I'll be there. Okay, enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Those of you who have not spoken, I've noted you. -5 marks. So it's your choice to retain your 5 marks or lose the 5 marks. You can do the same thing next week, self. Now we finish the exam.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You kind enough to share these slides with us, sir. The slides of today's class.
I see you should share your slides with them.
Okay, sir.
Prof, it's you, sir.